First of all, thanks to Rich for that introduction, and thanks for returning from your long-planned Rails to Trails ride. Just a few acknowledgments at the beginning, because this is really a collaborative effort from Brookings, Scott Andes, and Ellen Oakes. I mean, we've really tried to pull together a great research team and taking the advice from the county executive, from Mayor Bill Peduto, from Farnham and Rick Seiger and Tim McNulty from Carnegie Mellon, Pat and Rebecca Bagley, Jeff Romoff, and then the foundations. Hillman, Dave Roger, Ty Gorley, and Grant Oliphant, Andrew McElwain, Rob Stephanie. I mean, this is the collaborative ecosystem of Pittsburgh. And to be frank, there are few places in the United States or globally where you can get everyone in the same room, around the same table, towards the same goal. And that's a 21st century growth model, and that's a 21st century governance model. So thank you all for coming today, and frankly, thanks to Grant and Dave for listening to us a few years ago, where we basically said Pittsburgh has a naturally occurring innovation district and one of those powerful innovation ecosystems in the world. And now's the chance to realize your full, not just economic potential, but social and sustainable potential. So with that, let me get started. And Ellen's going to keep me to 20 minutes, or less now. We have said from the very beginning that the goal of this effort is to help through qualitative and quantitative research, evidence-driven analysis, to put Pittsburgh in the top 30 innovative cities in the world. This is a very big goal, but we think you have a platform to achieve it. We've done our work, and we just have to advance the next slide. We've done our work by doing the analysis, but more importantly, by doing 60+ interviews with public, private, and civic leaders, and then focusing on strategies that we think build off of your natural, distinctive, competitive strengths, and also adapt and tailor some of the best strategies that are emerging in the United States and the world. So what's the moment? And this is how we think about what is the burning platform. We're living through a period where a group of general purpose technologies, next generation technologies, are fundamentally transforming the world. About 3 years ago, McKinsey put out a report where they identified 12 technologies that over the next 10 or 15 years, as they move from the lab to testing, to prototyping, to deployment, to ubiquitous adoption, will amount to half of global GDP. And these technologies don't fit within individual compartmentalized clusters or sectors. They really cut across. They really impact how all the different parts of our economy operate. And when a place becomes a first mover around a next generation technology, several things happen. You get a whole bunch of high quality jobs in the technology sectors. But what you also get are all the wraparound benefits. When driverless cars come to fruition, just to take one example, it's going to affect the legal industry, the insurance industry, planning, architecture, parking. It's going to affect everything. So the places that are on the ground floor of these technologies are the places that are going to get multiple benefits through multiple sectors and occupations. Pittsburgh was there before, right? I mean, you were a first mover. You were a first mover around steel, and that had dramatic reverberating effects, multiplier effects across this economy. So you know what it's like to be on the ground floor of transformative technologies, and what we're saying is you can get there again. Now, the global media is somewhat obsessed with you. You're like a hot city, you're like a cool city. When the New York Times writes something about a tech makeover, and then starts talking about your restaurants, you know something different is going on here. But we don't think this is hype. And just the next iteration of sort of, a global obsession with moving cities. We think you have dramatic starting positions in several of these technologies. And you have them because you have some of the most advanced research institutions in the world and research institutions that fundamentally connect and interrelate and collaborate with major economy shapers like UPMC, right? I mean, this is about the 21st century platform of universities that are involved in advanced research with large flows of public investments coming out of whether it's DOD or NIH or other federal research agencies that then move down the line towards commercialization, business formation, business growth, the broader economic and social effects we want. So there are some major reasons why you're beginning to get the recognition of not just global media, but global companies, global investors, and this is just the beginning. So what is the position? And let's start with the good news first, because the first movers are going to have certain things. You can't fake your way to be a first mover around these technologies. You need advanced research institutions. You need a collaborative ecosystem. You need risk capital. You need talented workers. You need a global orientation. And you need a place that is essentially quality and urban. The Amazon competition is about an urban campus. Think about that. 15 years ago, 25 years ago, a major global company, one of the frightful five, they wouldn't be talking about an urban campus, right? But that's what they're talking about today. That's the only way to attract talent. That's the only way to have a collaborative, networked, innovative ecosystem. This is your innovative environment. It's your landscape. It may start with the Oakland Innovation District. That's your platform, because you fall out of bed in Pitt and you're in Carnegie Mellon and vice versa. That's a 21st century geography. Everyone wants it. You have it. Everyone's trying to copy it. You start with it. And then it radiates out to Lawrenceville, to Almano, to the downtown, to Bakery Square, to North Shore. This is not about borders in these districts. These are districts as platforms. And this is a relatively small place in the scheme of things. I mean, this is the odd thing about the United States. We're such a large country. But in our cities and our metropolitan areas, small is beautiful, right, in terms of our geography. It's where you have that concentration, that co-location, that agglomeration, and the authenticity and the vibrancy that then yields more innovation. So we may be a very large country, but our whole fulcrum, our platform, is in these relatively small innovation areas, only 1.7 square miles in the broader Oakland Innovation District, but it punches way above its weight in terms of residents, in terms of city workers, in terms of tax revenue, and it's a third of the entire state's R&D budget. I mean, think about that, how big the Commonwealth is, and yet a third of the R&D is located in Oakland. So the other thing that you start with is this collaborative ecosystem. The UPMC, Pitt, Carnegie Mellon relationship, backed by large amounts of capital, is highly unusual, even in the United States, right? And it's not a nice thing to do, it's the competitive thing to do. You're doing this because this is helping the advanced research institutions up their game, and it's helping a major employer and essentially tech company play out its full and realize its full competitive potential. Other pieces. Your philanthropies are large, but they're focused. Most philanthropies in the United States, no matter how big they are not focused on enhancing your competitive advantages or building your competitive potential. These philanthropies have done that in multiple ways, both by investing in the advanced research institutions, but also investing in the ecosystem, the incubators, the accelerators, all those intermediaries that move research to market. So when we go to other parts of the country, literally they talk about, can our philanthropies be like Pittsburgh? It's a really fascinating phenomenon. And then you've got this ecosystem where a company that starts in a Carnegie Mellon or a Pitt basically travels until they get to market, right? They can go to Alpha Lab or, and Innovation Works, right? They can get some of their initial seed funding from Riverfront Ventures, right? They can then move up the food chain after they add a bunch of employers to get to the accelerators that you have. They can get more capital as they move from seed to Series A to Series B. And then ultimately, they can have an exit, larger company, and work closely with a major new global player like Yelp. This is what everyone wants, a startup ecosystem off a base of advanced research, supported, mentored, capitalized at every step of the food chain. You have built this. You've built this with a lot of capital and a lot of attention. It is now yielding results. This report is just about getting more. And finally, you've become a place for domestic direct investment. You know, the US always talks about foreign direct investment. Can we get Siemens to come here? I mean, think about how the Southeast has attracted German and Japanese and Korean automakers. You're getting domestic tech investment, a lot of it coming out of Silicon Valley, because they want to be close to the talent. They want to be close to the secret sauce in your advanced research institutions and your ecosystem. These places, these people, these firms can go anywhere in the world. They're coming here because of what you have built over the course of many, many decades, actually. You're like a 40-year overnight success story in many respects. So we think you've got the table stakes to play. There's not many. Again, you can't fake your way to this. You can't just say, well, we've got a culture that's entrepreneurial and we've got a nice place. You need this mix of advanced research institutions and mature companies and an ecosystem. And you need a political culture, as you have with your mayor and your county, that are supportive. Okay, it's Brookings, so we have to talk about challenges. Because it's really important that you understand what it will take to get to the next step. This is not about putting a lot of cold water on this. This is just about reality. Part of the reality is, you know, the US had a collapse of advanced industries, advanced manufacturing in the early part of this century. These are the industries that basically are fueled by high levels of R&D and high levels of skilled workers, science, technology, engineering, arts, math, right? The STEAM economy. So you lost a bit of that, as everyone did in this country, but what you gained was advanced health and business services, still populated by very skilled workers, but without the same level of R&D perhaps for a portion of the workforce. So, you know, those are challenges, but they also reflect the larger structure of our economy. One real challenge is the disconnect, but solvable, between your academic prowess and business formation and employment. So when it comes to cell and tissue engineering publications, right, this is all coming out of Pitt, you're just crushing it, right, to use a Silicon Valley term. But you're not seeing the employment yet, right? Now that could be because, you know, Pitt has joined the top ranks recently of the Johns Hopkins and the Penns and so forth. But this is a good problem to have economic prowess that then can lead to employment. And we see the same thing out of software engineering, where the academic literature coming out of CMU and elsewhere is just incredible, not quite seeing yet the employment effects. So this is why we think you can, by focusing on clusters that as I'll talk about, begin to realize your full potential. The other bit is high growth entrepreneurship. To some extent, when you look at venture, you sort of track the country. You know, it's a relatively good story. I think the story or the challenge that you really need to hit here or meet here is about high growth entrepreneurship. The companies that get formed and stay, the companies that get formed and grow. I mean, this is really the kind of challenge that you have in Pittsburgh. Again, the platform is very strong. The ecosystem, you know, is you know, other places look to replicate. But this is a challenge that not just us, but others have identified. There are some demographic headwinds that also reflect the Rust Belt. right? You're not like an Austin or a Columbus or an Indianapolis, and because Columbus and Indianapolis really were not like the Rust Belt. They weren't the old manufactured industrial bases. So your population looks a bit flat, but behind this, there's some good news. The millennials are growing, huge magnet effect. That's why the New York Times is writing about you. But also some challenges in mid-tier workers that gets more to the sort of management issues that you might have as companies begin to grow and evolve and you move from startup to scale up or relationships with companies. So demographics are an issue, but also the question of equity, the question of sharing benefits. You have some long-term unemployed residents here, and you have disadvantage within the city and the metropolis, and you don't have many of the unemployed residents utilizing in some of the neighborhoods that surround Oakland your workforce services to the extent that they have, that they should. But, you know, the advanced economy or the technology-driven economy or the innovative economy, whatever phrase we want to use, is not just for the brainiacs coming out of Pitt or CMU or some of the other great universities you have here. A large portion of these jobs require technical skills, whether it's gained in special high school programs or in vocational ed or in community colleges or special workforce development programs. So a lot of the focus of the Allegheny Conference on workforce really matters here, and it's the way to have a growth in the innovation economy work for others. So where do we think you should head? And I think, you know, I think what we've been trying to figure out is a suite of strategies and a suite of initiatives that really fit you. This is not cookie cutter. You know, if you go to other Brookings releases, this is not what we're basically just saying to everyone. This is really customized to Pittsburgh. Really 4 strategies around building and supporting your innovation clusters, improving the pipeline of the high growth entrepreneurs, looking at talent, particularly at these mid-skill levels, and then taking this naturally occurring innovation district in Oakland and building it out off the large investments that are already being made by your universities on Forbes and elsewhere, and then selling it to the world. Because this is the way the world now thinks about innovation. They just don't think about countries or states or metropolitan areas or even cities. They think about districts. And they think about this platform of advanced research, mature economy, companies, startup scale-ups, investors, incubators, etc. They think about the ecosystem. You have it, now you need to really play it out. So if you do all this together, we think #InnovatePGH is what you end up with, right? A suite of strategies that have real metrics to them that over the course of relatively short period of time will yield more companies, more jobs, more opportunities, more tax revenue, all the stuff that any city or metropolis needs. So let's just talk through the innovation clusters here, because we think there are 3 plays here. They're all a little bit different from each other. Advanced manufacturing, robotics, life sciences, autonomous systems. In each of these sectors that really, or technology areas that cut across sectors, there are different kinds of plays for you to make. And the key here is not to just let it happen without any intention or purpose, is to basically understand what is the next stage here in robotics, in translational research, in autonomous systems. In some respects, what comes across is there are a lot of mature companies in this region that could be connecting more with your universities and more with the startup culture. You can do this because, again, you've got the sophistication and there are models around the world to basically build from. You know, in the United States, which is always not the best place to look for models, but at least we'll keep it at home, Indianapolis doesn't start with your assets. I mean, they really don't when you think about their universities and you think about some of their other advantages. But what they've done is built a very structured, formal effort over the last 20 years to basically invest in translational research, draw some of the best faculty in from around the country and the world, have have a research institute that's focused on problem solving with companies so that they can continue to be a major player in life sciences. Indiana as a state is the second biggest exporter of life science product. Part of that's medical devices, part of that's other aspects. So they've been intentional about this because they didn't really start with Carnegie Mellon and Pitt. They had like Avis, they had to work harder, I suppose. Old model, right? Just shows my age. On high growth entrepreneurs, some of this is already happening with Innovation Works, which is really a superb organization. But we think there can be more structured efforts. Again, the Georgia Research Alliance is a state effort. Well, I don't think that's going to happen in Pennsylvania anytime soon. Your city and county and metro is the new state. It's the new state of Pittsburgh, really, right? You're going to have to figure this out at this level. And again, the secret is to basically make that ecosystem even more tighter, more sharper between some of the mature companies you have, first customer programs for entrepreneurs, and some of this incredible startup entrepreneurs that are coming out of your universities. So there are some examples here that are quite helpful. On Talent Alliance, you also have some great efforts with their community colleges around mechatronics and so forth. What we're looking at are some of these closer in efforts that some of the universities here are already started with some of the adjoining neighborhoods, where you can fill what are clearly needs, occupational needs, labor market needs, as the ecosystem grows, as the economy grows in these small geographies. West Philly with their skills initiative, Upskill Houston, these are examples that have emerged. They are very sharp and focused. And they're basically run by nonprofit entities or by the business community. So it's not your typical kind of effort. And the last bit is the Oakland Innovation District. Again, what is happening in the world today is our investors, companies, technology initiatives that are global or national are looking for districts. They're looking for the places where there is already the co-location and concentration and agglomeration of universities and companies. There's only several dozen in the world today. You happen to be the world's best naturally occurring innovation district. So you could just wait for everyone to copy you and mimic what you already have, or you could basically say, we're going to take our starting point and move one step beyond. We're going to make Oakland a test bed, a living laboratory for technological deployment. When people enter Oakland, they're going to know they've entered a playground of innovation that just doesn't work for the techies, but works for a broader community, right? I mean, you can do this. So, because they're going to come. I mean, it's a global world. The investors, the other innovation districts, they want to see what you have, and they want to see if you're now the model to replicate. The only thing I would say is you need some structure to this. If everyone just goes off and does their own thing, it's a 2 + 2 = 4 effect. If you put some structure behind it, some collaboration behind them, some institution behind it, it's a 2 + 2 = 8 effect. That's what you want. You've built great institutions here before. You know how to do this. You've built great intermediaries here before. I'm not saying create another one, but you need formal, structured collaboration. And then you need to be as imaginative and creative. What is Amazon looking for? They're looking for a place that is in this century that gets the mix of talent and innovation and urbanity and creativity. That's what they're looking for, right? This is not about building the next suburban greenfield. That's not what they're going to do. They're looking for cities, and they're looking for cities with assets, and you have them. So this is our playbook. You know, it ain't perfect. It's good enough for government work, as we used to say in the Clinton administration, but even more importantly, it's good enough for economy building, economy shaping. And, you know, we have some starting points, but more importantly, you're going to add to the mix here, and it's going to become Pittsburgh